It's time for Reason.
Why should we feel guilty for arresting you? Why should we be like, you know what? Okay, you're a chemist, you're a teacher, you're contributing to society. Let's just let it slide. Why? We have laws for a reason, and it makes no sense to me why we would just say, you know what? We need to reform our immigration policy, and it's just too stringent. We're just going to say, rule of law, hey, here's a window. Let's go ahead and throw it out there.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason. It is a Wednesday, broadcasting live across the entire Mid-America region right here on the Mid-America Network, broadcasting out of Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, KQAM, also simulcasting on KGPT-TV. Welcome aboard. Good morning to you. I have to say, the media become more and more entertaining every single day. The media, how we approach certain issues, how we discuss and how we report certain issues are completely absolutely 100% hysterical, comical, entertaining, and yet pathetic all at the same time. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. My name's Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along today as we kick off a Wednesday. It is halfway through the week. We are officially the pre-Friday celebration. Yeah, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's have a little fun today. What do you say? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, the social media is up and running all across the board. We have, you can shoot me a message on Facebook, facebook.com/1480KQAM. Also on the Voice of Reason page, the Twitter at Hoosier Reason. The Facebook live feed is also up and rolling as well. Please, please, please like it, share it, leave a comment on it. Just acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form. It is posted on all of these stations' Facebook pages that we are currently broadcasting on right now. Yesterday, as you know, was the primary elections for the great state of Texas, and the media having a fiasco with this one. Here's what the headlines showed when I got online this morning. Democrats' turnout in Texas primary is the highest in 16 years, baby. That is what we hear from the media, right? There it is. They're excited. Oh, I mean, I guess that's not a devastating thing. They're excited, right? They're happy.
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay!
Yeah, we did it, baby. We showed up highest in 16 years. We've been able to dominate. We came in. We showed that we're here. We could play the soundbite. We are here. We are here. We are here. We're still present. We're still acknowledged. People are still paying attention to us. We are the Democrats of the great state of Texas. We are here. We are here. We are here. Please acknowledge us. Please let us know that we're still here. And that's what we heard in the media last night. The Democrats re-energized. The Democrats showing up en masse for these primary elections in the great state of Texas, and they are going to show that they are a threat come the general election in November of this year. Democrats in deep red Texas turned out to the largest midterm primary election numbers in more than a decade Tuesday, propelling female candidates towards challenging the entrenched male Republicans. Ooh, there it is. It's the sexist game, right? It's the women turning against the deep red Republicans in an entrenched male-dominant politics society of the Republicans in the state of Texas. There it is. The women rising up to defeat those evil, sexist men. To challenge the entrenched male Republicans in Congress and venting their anger at the President Trump in the first state primary of 2018. The biggest question was whether Texas is just the start of what's to come nationwide. Energized Texas Democrats showed up despite the long odds in November of ousting Republicans such as U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, who released a radio ad after clinching the GOP nomination Tuesday night, telling voters the Democratic opponent Beto O'Rourke wants to take our guns. You see that? He's scared. He must be terrified because right after the primary, he automatically began that campaign that she wants to take the guns, meaning that he's terrified of losing the election. He is petrified of actually losing to the Democrat. He is absolutely shaking in his boots of the fact that the Democrats may clinch that Senate seat in the great state of Texas. College students waited more than an hour to vote in liberal Austin, Texas, and rural counties offered Democratic candidates for the first time in years A tide of anti-Trump activism helped propel nearly 50 women to make a run for Congress. It is the run of women overturning the sexist pigs that are men in the state of Texas. More than 830,000 Democrats voted with ballots, still being counted late Tuesday night. The best showing in a midterm primary for Texas Democrats since then. 1 million voters turned out in 2002. Oh, wait a second. They had 1 million people turn out in 2002. They had 830,000 turn out last night. And yet in 2002, did they win any seats? Did they win any big victories with 1 million people turning out in 2002? Oh, wait. The biggest turnout in 16 years. That is what we call media manipulation. That is what we call media spin. The fact that they still had less people turn out than 2002, and in 2002 they really didn't do anything in the general election, but they turned out, baby, they showed up. And now the Democrats must be re-energized because 830,000 people showed up last night for the primaries. More Democrats that turned out in the last 16 years. But they're re-energized. So let's look at the numbers, shall we? Because it's all about the numbers. And if we can gauge a guess who shows up in the primaries, we can somewhat guess on what's going to turn out in the general election. Because if the Democrats are that energized, then they showed up en masse for the primaries, which means they're probably going to show up in roughly the same numbers for the general election, right? I get it. It's a midterm election, which means we have a little bit less turnout in the general election than in a big main election like a presidential election. So it's going to be a little bit lower this year. But if the Democrats are all energized, they are ready to go, they want to make their statement, they want to turn out, they want to show in mass and enforce that they are going to dominate this general election. They're going to have the women's movement of the liberal progressive women on the Democratic side wanting to take over the entrenched male Republicans in the state of Texas. Let's look at the numbers, shall we? According to last night, the 2018 Texas election results. When it came to the governor's race, there were a lot of actual Democrats on the ballot this year because, remember, they're energized. They're ready to go. They're pumped up. They are going to steal the election to become Democrats when it comes to the governorship next year. There were 9 Democrats on the primary ballot for governor, totaling with all the votes of all 9 candidates together, 1,017,150 votes. Guess how many Greg Abbott got by himself? Current Republican governor. 1.39 million. Oh, just by himself. Without any of the other competitors, which, by the way, there were 2 others. Each of them gaining one 20,000 votes, another one 127,000 votes. Oh, Greg Abbott, 1.39 million. And totaling all 9 candidates for the Democrat side together, they just barely scratched 1 million votes. Oh. But they rose up, right? They're going to change the tide. They created their momentum. They created their excitement. How about the U.S. Senate? Ted Cruz's, right? Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat, 61% of the votes she got, 641,000 votes. There were 3 people running for that one for the Democrats in the primary, totaling with all 3 Democratic candidates. 1,036,941 total votes between all 3 of them together. Ted Cruz got 1.315 million votes. Oh, just by himself. And remember, about a month or so ago, 2 months ago, there was the story saying that Ted Cruz was losing support and that he would lose even his primary because the Republicans are upset with Ted Cruz, because he sold out, because he supported Ted Cruz, because he supported President Donald Trump, because he had lost his vision of wanting to support actual Texas as opposed to wanting to look at the national issues. Ted Cruz was going to lose that primary, right? That was the story, trying to waver on some of the support for Ted Cruz, trying to dethrone him, trying to put it in your mind that he didn't have any more support. He was going to lose the primary, and then the Democrats were going to steal it in the end. All 3 Democrats together combined for that Senate vote got 1,036,000. Ted Cruz by himself, not including the 4 other candidates that were actually on the ballot that received 6%, 4%, 2%, 1% of the vote. Ted Cruz won 85% of the Republicans and 1.3 million all by himself without the other candidates. Oh. in the general election, if it was held today, he would have won even if all the Democrats united behind one candidate. Oh. You didn't hear that in the media, did you? How about U.S. House District number 1 in the great state of Texas? 2 candidates for the Democrats, totaling 15,000 votes for District number 1. Louis Gohmert, Republican, won 88% of the Republican primary, 64,000 votes. Oh, 64,000 votes with the combined for the Democrats with their 2 candidates, 15,000. There were 2 other candidates on the Republican side. They each got 5,000, 6,000, 2,000, whatever. Not a whole lot. 64,000 for the one candidate. Combined for the Democrats, 15. Oh. Doesn't look like they're doing so hot, is it? The only one last night that would have swayed, that would have actually changed, the only one out of all 10, 11, 12 House districts, whatever they have in the state of Texas, the only one that would have actually changed last night would have been District number 2. Current Republican in the 2nd Congressional District, Ted Poe, Republican. All the Democrats together would have collected 85,000 votes. That doesn't actually look right. I think I did a typo on that one. We'll have to do that one over the break because the Todd Litton was the winner of that one for the primary. 52% of the vote, 15,000 was the Republicans. 15,000 won on that one too for the winner, Kevin Roberts. Oh, look. I think we would have won that one too. I don't think we had any changes last night. Oh, but remember they had the 16-year voter turnout for the Democrats. They must have some momentum and they're going to change things, right? Yeah.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
So I did end up fat fingering something. Hey, don't blame me. Come on, it's 5 a.m. when I'm trying to crunch all these numbers here. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Looking at it, even District 2 that the Democrats had a potential chance of actually winning with their big rise up of 16 years worth of turnout last night. For all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates the Democrats had for Congressional District number dos, total votes of 28,598 votes. For the Republicans, and there were a lot of them for the 2nd Congressional District, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 candidates for that one. Total votes of 46,000. Oh, yeah, we kept that one, too. Not a single district, not one single district would have gone to the Democrats last night if we would have had the general election, united all the votes behind one candidate with everybody that they actually had. District number 4, 12,000 votes total for the Democrats. Oh, yeah, John Ratcliffe, the incumbent Republican for 4th Congressional District, 61,000 votes by himself, not including the 10,000 for John Cooper, the second candidate that was trying to challenge him in the primary. 61,000 compared to the 12,000. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, the media is going to tell you that it was the largest re-energized base rising up in a 16-year high for voter turnout for the Democrats in a primary, and therefore they are energized, they're ready to go, and you just wait till the primary, till the general election happens in November, because triple that amount of people will show up because all the activists that are really excited, that want to be anti-Trump and want to be anti-Ted Cruz and anti-Republican and anti-male and everything of the sort right now, all of them, they didn't even show up last night. They just showed up kind of sort of to let you know that they're kind of sort of there. Because that's how they roll. This is how the Democrats, we're going to coin this phrase, but they have enjoyed the sweet victory of defeat. The Democrats right now have enjoyed the sweet victory of defeat. They have not won anything. The states that they did win in the last election, they felt proud of when it was already a blue state. They won in a state like Alabama with the Senate race when it was a personal attack, not a policy issue. And now they feel re-energized by having a 16-year high turnout for Democrats in a primary in the great red state of Texas. And they would have lost every single district, every single governorship in the entire state. But they are re-energized, they're rebuilt, and they're ready to go. The Democrats right now are enjoying their sweet victory of defeat. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones this morning, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Pete.
What's going on, sir?
Well, I heard your numbers, and, I got to agree with you, but there's one thing you're missing here. and that is all these California transplants that have fled California and are trying to Californicate Texas.
That's true.
I think if there's any re-energizing there, it's just a bunch of transplants. I lived in Texas for a couple of years, and let me tell you what, I got a lot of respect for those Texans. And they are a very dedicated bunch, and they have a moral compass that does not shift with wind. And, you know, what you're seeing, the press ballyhoo, is a bunch of Californication, which is a bunch of, like, look at California. It's smoke and mirrors, and nothing's real.
Well, that's true.
That's all this is.
Well, that's true. That's all it is. And it's because of the loud voice that they actually have, because of these activists wanting to come from California to Texas and wanting to make a big stir. But the numbers don't lie. And right now they don't have the energy. They're not going to win any seats if these numbers are actually relatively accurate to what's going to turn out for the general election. And sure, we may get a few more people showing up to the general as opposed to a primary. But the fact is that all the activists on the progressive side, it's going to be like our 4th congressional district here in Kansas when we had our special election for Ron Estes and James Thompson. All of the activists for the Democrats showed up. The Republicans were not enthused to show up and just didn't show up, and we still dominated them by an 8-point margin. This is what's exactly happening here. All of their activists showed up. Half the Republicans showed up, and when we show up in an actual general election in November, it's going to be even tenfold of how many Republicans actually get dominating against the Democrats in that election.
Well, I don't disagree with you on that. I do wait with bated breath for the general election, and I just, I'm going to have my popcorn and, a ice cold soda, and I'm going to sit there and watch the election returns come in and just wonder what's, watching all these talking heads who are saying the Democrats are here to stay, watching their heads explode on TV that night.
It's comical. I mean, this is going to be, to them, the writing's on the wall, but they're so delusional they don't want to accept it or realize it. So to them, when they end up losing all of Texas again and losing whatever other state that they think that they're going to be energized in, maybe they'll win a couple here or there, we'll toss them a bone, whatever. But especially with Texas, with them trying to re-energize their entire base for the very first primary of the year and thinking this is what's going to excite them, when they come back and they lose every single district, every governorship, and whatever else is on the ballot for Texas, and then they throw their fit, it's going to be a shock and awe to them like they did on presidential election night. And they're like, where did Donald Trump come from? We didn't see this actually happening. And it's going to be really exciting and really fun to watch. Now,
they're going to blame Russian collusion.
Oh, of course, yeah. The Russians, they're in cahoots with Texas because we're trying to partner up on the oil. That's really what it is, see?
That's all it is.
Yeah. No, I will agree that because of the migration from California to Texas, that there is the potential to begin turning that state blue like it did the state of Colorado when everybody migrated to Colorado, and they ended up changing the dynamic there. In the long term, that is a potential that we need to be concerned of. But in this election, it's not there yet. They're not even close to actually becoming relevant in the state of Texas.
Well, I think we just, these Californians and their goofy ideas, what they've done to Colorado, they're going to try to do to Texas. They're trying it in Wyoming and Montana and Utah. It's slow, and you got to give the libs credit where credit's due. They have been methodical.
Well, that is very true. Pete, I appreciate it, my friend. Got to take a bottom of the hour break. We'll continue this when we come back. It is a Wednesday morning here on The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
I think I remember the film, as I recall.
Your home for entertaining radio.
This is your fault, too, man. I keep missing Rush Limbaugh's morning update every morning because I'm listening to your show.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Good Wednesday. It's not a Tuesday anymore. It's a Wednesday. Post-primary election day on Texas. It is a Wednesday. Halfway through the week. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today. Let's get you started. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. Right here on The Voice of Reason, we absolutely love having you aboard with us. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Your thoughts on the election last night. Look, I told you before, I love elections. Elections are my bread and butter, baby. I love looking at the numbers. I love looking at the districts. And by the way, I did not realize, scrolling through, I didn't even scroll halfway through the actual sheet. There are 36 congressional districts in Texas. Just imagine, 30. We have 4 here in Kansas. There are 36 of them in the state of Texas. That is a massive number, and it's really cool to be able to watch all of them. And scrolling through, I found one. And I may be missing some because some are running unopposed and some whatever. Some are already Democrat. There are a couple that are Democrat because there are some very large cities in Texas, and the districts may just be contained to the city limits, and the Democrats predominantly do better in larger populated areas. But district number 29 is really the only one that I see glancing through that I didn't do the numbers for, where they would have won. Sylvia Garcia, district number 29, by the way, currently held by Jean Green. Oh, yeah, a Democrat, not even a switching of the seat, but Jean Green, a Democrat, not being on the ballot anymore. Sylvia Garcia winning that one, 63% of the vote, 11,000 votes for that one. And there were 4 Republicans in that primary, all of them counting up to maybe 5,000 votes, 6,000 votes. So they would probably win that one in an already Democrat district. But remember, they showed up en masse, baby. They're going to show up in more. This is why it is so important for something called the Electoral College. This is why we need to remember what the Electoral College is actually all about. And let's do a little remembrance here. The Electoral College prohibits, and this is why, again, I get furious when I hear someone say that we need to protect our democracy. Our democracy. We don't have a democracy. We don't have a democratic system. We have a constitutional republic here in the state of in the United States. Because if we had a democracy, all the largely populated cities would vote and would outnumber every rural community, every small town, every farmer, everybody that doesn't live in a highly populated area, and Democrats would control everything. The reason we have the Electoral College, the reason that we have districts, the reason that we break this all up is so that way we can actually have a fair say for everybody, and that we're able to have some Republicans, some Democrats, some places rural communities, some places largely populated areas, and that's why we're able to actually have a fair shake and everybody's have some kind of voice. Because if we didn't, then all these other votes that we're seeing wouldn't matter, because we would see the largely populated areas in Texas overrun all of it. And that's what Democrats want, honestly. That's why you're seeing predominantly individuals that want to repeal the Electoral College, that want to actually go towards a democracy, actually come from the progressive side of the aisle, because they realize that they're being restricted by the Electoral College. They're being restricted by the electoral process right now, and they don't like that. If you remember, they threw a big fit of the fact that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 2-3 million votes in the presidential election. Why? It's because the people that voted already voted in districts that had already been called for that candidate. So did their vote actually matter? It was already called. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go and vote, because you need to make sure that it gets called for your district. So it is important to vote no matter what. I always encourage everybody to vote no matter what political aisle you're on. It doesn't matter to me, because you need to make sure that your district gets called for the person that you want to. So it's not only you voting, but it's also you being active and you going out and doing the phone banks and knocking on doors and holding the signs and having the yard sign and doing whatever else you do during the campaign, because you're that politically engaged. But if you look at some of these numbers, they could have easily won across the board in many of these districts and many of these areas if there was no Electoral College and if it wasn't broken up into actual districts. And that's why they're excited. They want to rally Democrats in a with a false flag, waving that false flag, trying to rally them to say, look, if you just show up, we'll find a way to get around the Electoral College. We'll vote in other districts. We'll start bleeding into the other districts, and we can start taking over the process, because we don't like this. Maybe we can start doing some gerrymandering and shifting around the district lines. Maybe we can start moving people into other districts and start turning it into a purple area. Maybe we can start influencing some of the other ones, because if you know, the progressives live in largely densely populated areas. They don't like rural communities. They don't like egg country. They don't like egg communities. They don't like that. Why? Because that's not their lifestyle. They don't like to work that hard. They don't like to think about living primitive. They want to live with the retro, with the hipsters, with the marijuana out there. They want to live in a style of a lifestyle that's completely foreign to a rural community. And they don't like the fact that them living in a large populated city, that their votes are capped with what actually gets called, and then it really doesn't matter after that. So they want to bleed it out. And the redistricting is actually really important. If you remember, I talked about a story in Colorado, the county of Boulder County, Colorado, is actually very Republican and very conservative. It's the city of Boulder that is very, very blue with the university, with the activists, with the progressives, with the hippies, with the whatever, that drive me nuts. And I refuse to drive in that town because it drives me nuts. I cannot deal. The smugness, the snottiness, the high taxes, the ridiculous. It drives me nuts. I cannot go through that town when I go to Colorado. But the rest of the county is actually very Republican. You know how they go blue every single time is because they like to, instead of actually when they redistrict, they didn't district it to where the city limits had its own district and then the rural community had it. Oh, no, we can't do that. They split it up like a pie chart. So every section of the city is represented in every other district of the county, and therefore the entire county goes blue when they actually have elections. Funny how that works, isn't it? Why? Because they want to be able to influence everybody else. It's the smugness of progressives. And I don't mean to do name calling here, but it's the reality of it. It's the smugness of progressives that want to forcefully influence you and tell you how to live your life. As conservatives, we're all about the hands off. You do your thing, I do my thing. Everything's hunky-dory. And then I don't really care how you live your lifestyle. I'm going to live my lifestyle. Don't impose it on me. I won't impose it on you. And we're going to be happy. I focus on my family, you focus on your family, and then together we raise a good community. And that's the way we live, right? As libertarians, as conservatives, as Republicans. The progressives say, no, the way you live is bad. You shouldn't be living in those traditions. You shouldn't be living in those happy family values. You shouldn't be living the way that you actually live. Those are bad. Those are outdated. Those are old. Those are bigoted. Those are racist. Those are whatever. You need to change it. So we're going to impose legislation to force you to change it. So that way, and even if it's not saying you're just not allowed to live this way, we're just going to create enough red tape to where it's difficult for you to live that way. And you are forced by nature, quote unquote, to change your ways. Welcome to the progressive values. And with them yelling, with them screaming, with them rising up, with their signs that they're holding, with the Democrats thinking that they have a chance in the state of Texas to overturn some of these seats, is comical. Absolutely comical. Yes, they have the loudest voice, just like they did right here in the 4th Congressional District in the Wichita area, South Central Kansas area, for our seat in that special election. They were yelling, they were screaming, they were rallying, they were ready to go. They were the Bernie Sandersites. James Thompson was going to be the next savior of the Kansas. It was going to be the turning of the tide. It was going to turn this place blue, baby. We were going to change it. And you still hear that, by the way. You still hear that rally cry because they're getting ready for their election coming up this fall here as well. You heard the rally cry out in western Kansas on the big 1st Congressional District. It was going to change. It's going to happen. You hear the cry going on right now in the 2nd Congressional District with Lynn Jenkins wanting to retire. You hear it right now with Kevin Yoder, with him thinking that he may be a little concerned about it, so he's starting to waver a little bit on his Republican values and wanting to become a little more moderate to try and appease some of these individuals that are rallying against him because he thinks that he may be in a swing election right now. Because the Democrats are rallying, they're crying. Just because you have the loudest voice does not mean that you have the majority vote. Does not mean you have the majority mentality. Does not mean that you even have the right philosophy in any way, shape, or form. It just means that you have a really loud voice. That's it. Sometimes that can be used for good. Sometimes that can be used for bad. But I guarantee you, every other show today that you listen to, every other media outlet that you hear today, they're going to not talk about the different numbers and not say that if it was actually one against the other in a general election that was held with all the unified Democrats, unified Republicans in a vote, that the Republicans would have won every single district that they currently hold today, and that potentially we could even sway some of the blue districts into the red districts and actually go the opposite. You're not going to hear that in the media today. The stories you're going to hear in the mainstream media are, oh, look, 16-year high when it comes to voter turnout for the Democrats in Texas. Texans have a chance to turn that state purple. Democrats have a chance to start gaining some traction, and we should use that momentum across the rest of the nation. It is beneficial for us as Republicans, the fact that Texas was the very first primary that happened in the country this year. because Texas is the deep red state. And if anybody is even relatively involved in politics or news of the morning, and if anybody's even relatively interested in what's happening in other states, then they'll see that even Texas, that is our surefire red state, that we know is going to continue to be red, is going to continue to be red. And that is encouraging for us, because we may not have that loud activist voice because we actually, are productive throughout the day and actually go to work and actually do jobs and actually do things. We actually just sit back and listen. We're the silent majority. And when we hear the fact that Republicans still are overwhelmingly dominant in Texas, even though the media is not going to tell you that, that's kind of a comfort thing for us, isn't it? Because even though that we don't have that loud voice, we know that we're still showing up. We're still becoming active. We're still engaged. We're just not yelling at the top of our lungs. We're not yelling. We're not screaming. Go ahead and scream like the little children. Go ahead and yell like the little wannabe activists. Go ahead and think you have a chance, and then we'll show up and we'll dominate you. It's kind of like the underdog in the games in sports. It's the one that's silent. It's not the trash talker. It's not the loudmouth. It's not the jerk. But it's the one that just sits back and waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and then just dominates as soon as they walk into the ring. It's the boxer that's not like Floyd Mayweather, that actually shows up without a word, doesn't trash talk, doesn't talk down against his opponent. He just sits there, stares him down, walks into the ring and knocks him out. End of story. Now, the trash talker's entertaining sometimes. The trash talker's fun to listen to sometimes. Doesn't mean that they actually have the better skill. The Democrats right now, you may be entertaining to listen to. You may be fun to listen to thinking that you have a chance. Doesn't mean you have the numbers. That's what we need to go under right now. Republicans, stay united, stay happy, and stay motivated, because we're still going to come in and dominate this next election.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Then wrapping up hour number one already. It's hard to believe. It goes by way too fast, doesn't it? The sweet victory of defeat is the tone today for the Democrats. What do you say? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Going once, going twice. Give me a call back. I'd love to hear from you. 721-8255, 721-TALK. The sweet victory of defeat. Coming up in hour number two, we got a lot to get to today. I don't want to focus on the elections the entire time today, but I do want to spend a good amount of time to be able to recap them and put them into perspective for everybody as we go out the rest of the day, because you're not going to hear it this way the rest of the day from the mainstream media. But first, it's time for Rick with the news.
And it's time for some good news.
Okay, here we go, people.
That's what we're talking about. What's happening?
Hey, good morning, Andy. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, the winds have died down today after crews spent much of yesterday battling pockets of wildfire across Kansas, with at least 10,000 acres burned. Kansas Division of Emergency Management spokeswoman Katie Horner says that as of late yesterday afternoon, there were still 17 active fires, and firefighters were mopping up another 6. The fires were primarily across central Kansas, ranging from the Nebraska line to the Oklahoma border. It's unknown how many structures may have been destroyed, but officials reported at least one home that caught fire in Elk County. Strong winds also blew over a communications tower in Logan County. The National Guard was deployed, 6 helicopters with water buckets. They also activated 29 soldiers to man those birds and 2 fuel trucks in support. A Texas-based search team says it found nothing over the weekend associated with the case of missing 5-year-old Lucas Hernandez from Wichita. The Wichita Eagle reports that Texas EquiSearch arrived in Wichita on Saturday to look for Lucas. EquiSearch, a group that volunteers searching for lost and missing people. Police don't believe Lucas was abducted. They do encourage people to continue sending tips. And a father who said his son was kicked off the school bus for 3 days for bullying made him run to school instead in the rain. Maybe you've seen this. It's on social media and it's getting a lot of buzz. Brian Thornhill's Facebook Live video recorded while driving behind his son picked up more than 1.6 million views on Facebook. Thornhill, who is from Roanoke, Virginia, said that they joked that the boy will either be fast or he will be obedient. But so far, they're working on fast. He shared the video of his son's second and third morning jogs along with parenting advice. If you get your panties in a wad seeing a kid jog, I feel sorry for you. You probably need a lap or two yourself.
That is very true. You know what? I guarantee you this is, if the reason he's jogging is because he was bullied, I guarantee you that this is...
No. The reason he's jogging is because he was bullying.
Oh, he was bullying. Oh, he wasn't the bullied.
So Dad said, screw it. You're not riding the bus. You will run your butt in the rain.
Well, you know what? Good for them. Yeah. Good for them. That's exactly what we need to see in society. If you have a bullying kid, guess what? You're running and you're running the laps, baby. And then, you know what? They've just learned a new trade of how to run for track.
Back in our day, back in my day, in the principal's office, they had the Board of Education. The Board of Education was right in the principal's office. A couple of swats on the behind, and then yeah. But, that was before participation awards. That was before...
Don't knock my generation. Don't knock my generation.
Do you know what? I saw my car. I didn't even realize this. My vehicle has an alert for protesters, and I didn't even realize it. But it lit up this morning because it was below freezing, and right on my dashboard, there was a little snowflake that lit up.
Right
so
there.
I think that's my protester alarm on my car.
It is the protester snowflake alert. So It is that way. We can alarm people when it's actually happening. You know what? You're right. I wonder if it lights up when you see protesters trying to block the road. And it says, oh, please accelerate here.
Speed bump.
Whoopsies. There it is. Rick with the news.
And that's the news.
Appreciate it very much. We'll get another update here in an hour or so. Coming up, we do have a special second hour. I am excited. And for our Western Kansas listeners, we will be tapping into you guys actually on KIUL coming up in about 40 minutes or so, as Greg Orman is going to be a candidate for the independent governor's race. He's going to be on Mid-America in the Morning. Dan Hubbard, we're going to chime in here on the Wichita area, and we're actually going to simulcast that here as well, as they have some big news and they're going to be chatting. So we'll be doing that soon. Also, our very first county update in hour number 2 as well. Hour number 3 is open lines to you, baby. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to recap these elections. There was a legal suit that's begun with Secretary of State Chris Kobach. We'll cover that among some other goodies that I think we need to touch on today. So much to get to, so little time, and it's a Wednesday, which means we're halfway through the week already and running out of time to talk about these things. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason coming up. Stay here.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
Why should we feel guilty for arresting you? Why should we be like, you know what? You're okay. You're a chemist. You're a teacher. You're contributing to society. Let's just let it slide. Why? We have laws for a reason, and it makes no sense to me why we would just say, you know what? We need to reform our immigration policy, and it's just too stringent. We're just going to say, rule of law, hey, here's a window. Let's go ahead and throw it out there.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live right here in South Central Kansas on the Big Talker KQAM, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side here in Wichita, Kansas. Also simulcasting KGBT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. What's happening? This is the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along with us today on a Wednesday, the pre-Friday celebration. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I guess I'm just a little excited that way. 8 minutes past the hour, and it's great to be with you today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We have social media up and rolling. We have the Facebook Live up and rolling. You can email me, Andy at KQAMradio.com. Does not matter what you want to do. The fact that you just reach out is really awesome, and we do love that and appreciate that very much. Coming up on the show today in this hour, kind of a fun one. We have something that we haven't done before, but at 7:40, we're going to be jumping in and simulcasting with our sister station 1240 KIUL in Garden City, Kansas, as they have a guest, and we've had him on the show here as well, independent candidate for the governor's race, Greg Orman. He's going to be joining them out in Garden City to announce his running mate for the governorship, and we will be simulcasting with them. They're going to be on the phone line, so we'll be jumping on with them as he comes into his segment at 7:40 and ends up interviewing Greg Orman and his running mate. So we're looking forward to that. Plus, at 7:45, as you know, on Tuesdays at about 7:45, we've been doing our city update, getting ready for the city council meetings. And yesterday was kind of fun. Hopefully, you did show up to that one, talking about some of the fireworks laws in the state or in the city. And if you want to touch on those, you're more than welcome to do so. I'd love to hear about how that one went. But coming up today, we're going to be doing our county update at 7:45 today as well. Jim Howell, Sedgwick County Commissioner Jim Howell, will be joining us, and we're going to start doing this every week. I want to get the information out. I want to get the opportunity for you to know what's going to happen at the meetings for both the city council and for the county commission. I want you to be engaged, to be able to show up if you're able to be able to voice your opinion, and then we can get a recap and a prelude to what's going to come up for the next meeting as well. So Sedgwick County Commissioner Jim Howell will be joining us at 7:45 today. The 8 o'clock hour is open lines to you for us to discuss whatever we want to do. So coming up in hour number 3. I do want to start off this hour, though. Last hour we talked about the primaries in the state of Texas, and the Democrats thinking they have momentum. The Democrats think that they have the Republicans on the edge, baby, and that they're going to be able to start dominating the discussion the way that they want to, and they're going to start turning seats, which I find quite ironic. They're doing it, by the way, when it comes to voter laws. They're doing it when they're trying to loosen up the voter laws a little bit. They're trying to say anytime that you want to have any form of identification is racist. Remember that. It's racist if you actually want to show that you are who you are when you actually show up to vote. And if they're able to start repealing some of those laws, if they're able to start repealing some of the electoral college laws, if they're able to repeal some of the laws that we currently have, and they can start loosening the girdle, so to speak, when it comes to voter laws, then we will start seeing a shift in the tide. We will start seeing the wave of Democrats coming out and some of the elections starting to turn seats that are predominantly deep red areas, because it may be rural communities, maybe agricultural communities, it may be the non-big city progressive hipster communities, but we'll start seeing them to be overturned. Why? Because they don't like the fact that there are large amounts of people in one area that's isolated one area, and then they're not represented by enforcing and imposing their will onto other individuals in other areas. They don't like that. They don't like the fact that they can't tell you what to do on a daily basis. The progressives love dictatorships. Now, I'm not talking about a political party here. I'm not saying that Democrats are tyrants. I am saying that progressives, the ones with progressive, look, this entire thing about politics, this entire war is about ideology. It's not about party. It's about ideology. Now, it goes into a conflict a little bit with what I'm sure someone's going to try and catch me up on it and say that when you say party over person in the general election, then you're conflicting with that. No, I'm not. Because it's a war on ideology. And in the primaries, especially, it's about ideology and what the party's actually going to represent in that ideology. But at the end of the day, it's about progressive values that want to impose its will on you and tell you exactly how to live your life. And conservatives who just say, go do your thing. I don't really care. I got my own life to live. And that's really the big difference. But they see opportunities. The Democrats, the progressives, they see opportunities to start changing the tide in elections when it comes to this election and the upcoming ones in the next few years because of voter ID laws. And if they're able to defeat Chris Kobach, Secretary of State, on his voter ID laws in Kansas, that is going to be the momentum push that they need in order to start implementing their abuse of voter laws in other states as well. And that trial began yesterday, or just a couple of days ago. Testifying on Tuesday, yesterday, the federal court case that tests Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach's claim of widespread voter fraud. Certain individuals, like Charles Stricker, said that he felt confused and embarrassed and uncomfortable as he filled out the provisional ballot at a designated table. Now, first off, that's the argument we're going to have. Again, the entertainment comical value of this. That is the argument the progressives are going to hold up. Oh, I felt really embarrassed and uncomfortable because I had to sit at a separate table and people were looking at me, and I had to fill out a provisional ballot when I didn't think I needed to fill out a provisional ballot, and I felt really uncomfortable. And you should feel pity on me because his laws are really, really tough and he's a big meanie head. And I had to sit at a different table.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Having to sit there on a public display was almost as if I were the only one that did something wrong. And his vote didn't even count, according to the Topeka Capital Journal. So this is going to be the argument that they're putting up against Chris Kobach, that his laws are unfair, that they're a little too strict, and that the individuals had to fill out provisional ballots, and then they don't even get voted on and actually counted, which is just not the case. If you remember the Press Herald, pressherald.com, after the 2016 election, Kansas disqualified more votes than Florida, which had 7 times in population. Kansas, a conservative firebrand promoting President Donald Trump's unsubstantiated claims of widespread voter fraud, oversees a Kansas election system that threw out at least 3 times as many ballots as any similarly sized state did. Feeling concerns about the massive voter suppression should its practices become the national standard. Only 6 states among the top 10 in population discarded more votes during the 2016 election than the 33rd largest state of Kansas, according to the data collected by the Election Assistance Commission, a federal agency that certifies voting systems. Kansas's 13,717 rejected ballots even topped the 13,461 from Florida, which had about 7 times as many residents. That's the story you heard after the 2016 election, remember? And this is what's carrying on to this case, is that we handed out provisional ballots and 13,000 of them didn't get counted, and it's really unfair, and that we should start loosening it up because more people need to actually be counted. They don't hear the other part of the story. And as we've talked with Secretary of State Kobach on this show here, as we've read the numbers right after the election, as we've regurgitated over and over and over again, that yes, we rejected a large amount of provisional ballots. We also gave out 3 times as many more provisional ballots than any other state, which means that our percentage of disqualified ballots was extremely low. If you want to look at it, actually, Missouri had double the amount percentage-wise of rejected provisional ballots because they gave out way less, and then they rejected more of them as a percentage of how many they actually gave out. We gave out numerous amounts, and that's the purpose of what he wanted. We've talked to Chris Kobach about this on the air, and he said, we want it to be very easy for you. If you're registered to vote and everything's fine and hunky-dory, fine, then you don't even have to fill out a provisional ballot. If there's a difference or some type of conflict between the laws for how you can vote for a statewide election as opposed to a federal election, then you're going to fill out a provisional ballot, and then we can count and see whether it actually matters or not, whether it actually counts or not. But you have the opportunity to fill it out, and then we'll do the back legwork on the end to see whether it's legit or not. And guess what? That process worked beautifully. We handed out tons of provisional ballots. What was it, 30,000 provisional ballots in 2016? And we rejected 13,000 of them. Missouri handed out close to 10,000 provisional ballots and rejected close to 5,000 or 6,000 of them. It was a 60% rejection, if you want to look at it percentage-wise, of theirs, as opposed to Kansas that was maybe like a 15%. It was absurd how little we rejected compared to how many we actually get. But you're not going to hear that. So instead, the case is it makes people feel uncomfortable. I think we need some therapy, don't we? We need some therapy because you were the outcast. For the progressive side that likes to be outcasts anyways because they like to be different than the norm, they want to do something different. They want everybody to feel bad for them. They want them to feel like they're the identity politics. They want them to use the identity politics for them to feel special. They felt very rejected this time because they had to sit at a separate table. And they had to go fill out a provisional ballot that nobody else had to do. And I felt very uncomfortable. And I felt like I was on public display. And I felt that I was very embarrassed. And it just wasn't fair for me. So I need to work through it. We probably need to go to our safe space. And we need to work through our feelings a little bit about how we feel when you're sitting at a table that nobody else is sitting at. Because we need to just walk with everybody else. We are the followers, not the leaders. And I don't like to be the leader. I don't like to do something different. I just want to go along with the norm here. The American Civil Liberties Union attorney Dale Ho said the Kansas Proof of Citizenship law that took effect in 2013 disenfranchised tens of thousands of Kansans. Tens of thousands. Well, we only rejected 13,000 provisional ballots, so that would be 10,000. I don't know about tens multiple, but it's a nice play on words. The 127 non-citizens known to have attempted to register in the year 2000, or since 2000, he said was insignificant to the portion of the 1.8 million Kansans on the actual voter roll. What does it matter? 127 doesn't really matter. There's way more people in Kansas, so if they tried to vote and they weren't supposed to, it was only 127 out of the 1.8 million. It doesn't really matter. Except for depending on what district they actually live in, and the fact that that was 127, that unless these laws were actually in place, we would have no idea that they actually would have voted, which means that there could potentially be more of them down the road if people start figuring out that 127 people actually voted when they weren't supposed to in the state of Kansas. Do you see the lack of enthusiasm that progressives and Democrats actually have in this case, wanting to ensure that there's a one-person, one-vote law, that there's actually people voting who are supposed to be voting, and making sure that one of the most precious pieces of our constitutional republic, one of the most precious pieces of our governmental system, of having elected officials represent us the proper way, that they don't care about that process as long as they're in control. And if there's any slight law that may put the red tape on them to restrict them from actually abusing the system, then they panic. If these laws weren't in place, if we wouldn't have implemented something like this, then no one would know what's actually happening. They said that there's been no cases known across the nation when we actually started the Voter Election Commission, the Voter Integrity Election Commission, that Chris Kobach started up with Vice President Mike Pence at the federal level. They said that we don't know of any voter fraud mass going on across the nation. Mass voter fraud all over the place. We don't know of any. Why? Because we haven't actually looked at it. We haven't studied it. We've heard numerous different cases during the 2008 election of Acorn registering people to go and vote that were dead, or that were minors, or that had false identification, or that should not be voting at all. We heard the cases in the last election in 2016 of individuals in New York to where the Democrats candidates personally were busing people from precinct to precinct to precinct, and they openly admitted it. But yet we don't know of any voter fraud happening. We don't know of any mass voter fraud happening across the nation. Why? Because we've never actually researched it. And once you start putting laws into place to make sure that we ensure voter security, then we start seeing them pop up. And if there's very few of them, then good. That's awesome. That's good news. I want to come back after a study and after the laws are in place and say, you know what? We only found 2 cases of voter fraud. Awesome. That means that we're doing our job. I don't want to come back and say there's hundreds of thousands of voter fraud cases, because that means that the last elections before have been a problem. So we're moving in the right direction, but they don't like it, do they? And the ACLU claiming racism, claiming bigotry, claiming that it's just uncomfortable, and it makes you feel very, very bad. Let's go to the phone, shall we? 316-728-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm just getting old.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, Jim. That just means that you are seasoned and you are experienced.
Well, at least I look more distinguished.
There you go. Exactly.
Anyway, I used to work sometimes on the polls at the elections. I thought it was my duty. Actually, it was the first time I volunteered. I was surprised to learn I got paid for the day. I didn't understand that when I volunteered.
Sure.
The paper ballot, the provisional ballot, the only difference between it and the paper ballot is an envelope you put it in so that you can they can verify all
sure.
of the data later.
Exactly. It doesn't get counted on the spot. It just counts later.
You sit at the same table, and when you're at the polls, people come in and they're in a hurry, and the machines have got lines waiting for people to vote.
Sure.
And they'll say, "Let me have a paper ballot," and they'll go sit down and vote on a paper ballot because they don't want to take the time. So this guy who says that he was embarrassed and had to sit and do it, it was totally in his mind. A lot of people come in and ask for a paper ballot because they think that it gives them a record that can be watched. And that's true. The paper ballot is saved, but it's counted on the same machines.
Oh, sure.
People just don't understand the entire election process. And a lot of people, I mean, at primaries, working the primary, people would come in and say, well, I want to vote for this person and this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to explain to them that this is a primary election, and that guy picked that guy to be his running mate, and you don't get to select the individuals. It's the way the system works.
Sure.
People don't understand. They know they should vote, but they don't put out even 15 or 20 minutes of study.
Well, and that's the problem. And I'm of the case, and I'm of the belief that we should, if you don't understand the issues or understand the candidates, then it's better for you not to show up than to show up and just make a bad judgment. Jim, I appreciate it. We got to take a break, but you're absolutely right in that case that people don't do a lot of studying. But even beyond that, even beyond just the intellect of what we're doing when we actually go to the voting booth, just the fact that we feel uncomfortable because we want to sit there and have to fill out a provisional ballot, and we're going to play victimhood in that sense. It is the typical, classical victimhood argument that they're using just because he felt uncomfortable sitting off to the side by himself filling out a provisional ballot as opposed to standing in line with everybody else, and how victimized he felt, and then his vote ended up not even counting in the end because of that, and all the high rejection rates that we had in Kansas for the provisional ballot, when actually percentage-wise it was extremely low compared to our neighboring states. But no one's going to tell you about that one. 25 minutes past the hour. Take a break. We'll open up lines to you when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Charles Stricker, by the way, the one that said he felt uncomfortable filling out the provisional ballot, sitting off to the table all by himself, and he was all embarrassed, said that he moved from Chicago to Wichita. He showed up the last day that he was able to register to vote, and he showed up twice, the first time saying that he needed additional documentation. In addition to providing a birth certificate and other proof of citizenship, he needed to find a piece of mail showing he lived in the state of Kansas. And he said, for me, it's really about the principle of the matter. I don't think the average Kansan should have to sue the Secretary of State to get registered to vote. No, you don't have to sue the Secretary of State to get registered to vote, and there's no problem filling out that provisional ballot if it didn't get processed in time because we procrastinated to wait till the last day. So what I have to say is something that we've said many times before. What's that? I can't quite hear you. What was that? One more time, please. Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at, right? 316-721-8255. Bottom of the hour news coming up when we come back. We'll be simulcasting with our sister station out in Garden City, Kansas for some big news for independent governor's candidates Greg Orman on his running mates and what's going to be happening with his campaign as of late. Your thoughts and calls as well. Got lots to cover today. This is The Voice of Reason on a Wednesday. Stay here.
Patriotism is alive and well. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live right here in Wichita, Kansas. Great to have you along today on the Big Talker, KQ AM, 36 minutes past the hour, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you're going to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. What's on your mind? Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to jump over to our sister station KIUL via telephone as there's a big announcement with the independent candidate Greg Orman. We've had him on the show before, and they are broadcasting out there in just a few minutes. We'll get to that. Also, at 7:45, we'll also have our county commission update of the week with Jim Howell, Sedgwick County Commissioner, as well. When we talk about these elections, and just kind of wrap up what we've been talking about with this voter fraud, case with the voter identification. If you remember, we've interviewed so far all 3 of the candidates for Secretary of State in the state of Kansas so far on the show. We'll have a primary coming up in a few months, and that'll be kind of fun to see what they have to say. But all 3 of them have mentioned that while they're on the campaign trail, while they're discussing, while they're meeting constituents, meeting voters, that the one priority the people have asked them about was the fact that, hey, are we going to repeal the voter laws? Because we don't want to see them repealed. We want to see them in place. We like the fact that we know it's one person, one vote. We know that there are not individuals who are not supposed to be voting that are not in our system. We love that. Now, look, that doesn't mean that we want to restrict voting. We're not limiting votes. I've seen numerous amounts of hate messages on social media, Facebook, Twitter, trying to attack Chris Kobach and trying to attack conservatives because we don't want people of different skin colors to vote and all this other stuff. With first, number one is racist. They are the racists for thinking that. Number 2, it's completely absurd. We hand out more provisional ballots than any other state. If there's even the slightest chance of either we're not sure whether you're actually registered, we're not sure whether you registered properly, we're not sure if you actually can vote on this election or that election, whether the state or the federal or whatever, here's a provisional ballot, fill it out, you're allowed to cast your vote, and then we'll count it on the back end if we actually go through the process, we do our research, and we figure out whether you're able to or not. It's a very simple process. Here you go. Here's a provisional ballot for you. It's like what's her face? Here's a car for you and a car for you and a car for you, Oprah. Here's a provisional ballot for you and you and you. Everybody gets a provisional ballot, and then we can actually decide whether it's going to be counted or not on the back end. What's wrong with a process like that? As opposed to many other states that don't do provisional ballots, that don't think they necessarily need them or want to limit them, and then they reject a lot of them when they do actually hand them out. Meaning that their percentage of rejection is way higher than here in the state of Kansas, but you're never going to hear something like that. So this trial is going to continue on, and this could really be the teetering point between the Democrats thinking, the progressives thinking that they can kind of loosen the girdle on the voting laws and be able to abuse that a little bit because no one's going to be monitoring it. Oh, come on. You don't think that's going to happen? Come on. You don't think that just by the basic human nature of how the progressives actually work, the progressive mindset, the ideology of we're going to kind of bend the rules a little bit, the establishment. I'm not talking about parties here. It's done on both ends. But come on. If there's no one looking at the law, no one actually enforcing it, no one actually making sure that we go through 5 pieces of red tape and hurdles that we have to jump over in order to actually vote, you don't think that someone's going to try and abuse that a little bit? Come on. Of course they are. And this is why this trial is so important. Because if we're able to uphold it in the state of Kansas, then other states are able to implement this. If we're not able to uphold it, then progressives see the red target, they see the beady red eyes, and they're going to come after it like a vicious animal, and they're going to try and attack it for any other state that even has close to the same kind of stringent laws we do when it comes to voting. They're going to do whatever they can to start dismantling the voting process. They're going to do whatever they can to start dismantling the Electoral College. They're going to do whatever they can to try and break down the system to where the system's flawed, the system's unregulated, the system's open to abuse, and then they're going to say, oh, no one's looking at it, so look, we don't have cases of voter fraud because we don't see any. Of course not, right? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. All right, I want to jump over. We have them on the line, and we're going to go over to in simulcast with our great station, 1240 KIUL out of Garden City, Kansas, which is actually fun because before I got this job, years back, I used to host that morning show as well. But independent candidate Greg Orman, we've had him on the show talking about his campaign, talking about the run for the independent run. Greg Orman is live with Dan Hubbard with the Mid-America in the morning, and they are having some big news when it comes to his candidacy and his run in the state of Kansas for the independent governor's race. Here's what they have to say.
A great story.
Patty's Wine and Spirits, 1904 East Mary Street, right across from Jack's Bar and Grill.
The best place for sushi and hibachi in southwest Kansas is Osaka Steak and Sushi in Garden City, Schulman.
All right, they're still on a break there. We're going to come back to them in just a second as they're getting ready to do that announcement as they got a little bit different clock. So the big news is that, and I can tease this a little bit, is the fact that Greg Orman has announced his running mate for the run for governorship as lieutenant governor, and it's someone from the western part of the state. Now, after we hear the announcement, we'll discuss this for a minute and get your take on it, because being an independent run, the question is, who do you choose as a running mate? And then when you look for the running mate, you always look for somebody that's going to be able to help you when it comes to the PR, when it comes to being able to appeal to some demographic, or when it comes to appealing to some region of the state. Chris Kobach's looking at that. Mark Hutton's looking at that. Jim Barnett's looking at that. And they always want to find somebody that can actually help them in certain areas that they feel that their candidacy may be a little weak. Greg Orman, being an independent, can either choose a Democrat and try and pull from the Democrats, or choose a Republican and choose from the Republicans, or go independent as a running mate themselves, who's been a long-lasting Republican or Libertarian or whatever they're trying to appease to, and let's see what they actually have to say.
Nationwide company on your side. Allied is flexible enough to meet each customer's individual insurance needs. Call us today so we can go to work for you. KFSA in Dodge City at 2011 Central, or call 227-2146. In Garden City,
I think they're still on a break. We'll play it by ear with this one and see how this one goes. But Dan Hubbard is the morning show host on Mid-America in the Morning there in KIUL. Simulcasting, by the way, on KYUL and 1310 KYUL as well. And once they make this official announcement,
your live local morning show, Mid-America in the Morning, every weekday morning here on KIUL.
Let's see what they have to say in Garden
Welcome back.
City.
It is Mid-America in the Morning, 7:41 here on this Wednesday morning, as we simulcast live with our sister station in Wichita, the Big Talker KQAM. We'd like to welcome those folks here with us as well, as we're very honored to have in studio with us this morning independent gubernatorial candidate Greg Orman with us in studio. We'll be joined by another special guest coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But Mr. Orman, first of all, welcome to Garden City. It's nice to have you here at KIUL with us this morning.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about your decision to run for governor. I know that you ran for Senate or Congress, I think it was, as an independent a few years back, but now you decide you want to run for governor here in Kansas.
Yeah, we ran for the U.S. Senate in 2014, and as we looked around and as I thought about what was going on in our state, it became clear to me that we're at a critical juncture. What happens over the next 5 years in Kansas, I think, is going to decide the path that our state is on for the next several decades. And, Kansans understand intuitively that things aren't going the way we want them to go. And I was concerned that if we didn't do something, if we didn't dramatically change the path that we're on as a state, that my two daughters aren't going to feel inspired to build their lives here in Kansas. And lots of our sons and daughters aren't going to want to build their lives in Kansas. And so I just felt deeply concerned and decided I had to get involved.
When you say dramatic changes and things for here within the state of Kansas, what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, there are a number of things. And in fact, we have a website, ormanforkansas.com, where we describe what I consider our 5 priorities. But if I were to just sort of take them one at a time, we clearly have to grow the Kansas economy.
Right.
We have an aging population. We have kids who are leaving the state. If we want to get those kids to stay here and have the resources to take care of an increasingly dependent population, we have to grow the Kansas economy to create those jobs and opportunity, to create the tax base to be able to do that. What we really need is a proactive economic development strategy that leverages all of our state's natural advantages. What I think we've had in the past is a series of tactics. And as a business guy, I can tell you that it makes a whole lot more sense to look at what your advantages are as a state, say, how can we leverage them? How can we grow the Kansas economy? And frankly, we've got a lot of things to be proud of in Kansas, a lot of things that we can build on if we just did it in a thoughtful way.
When we look at Kansas, we look at a lot of things going on. And the big question, and of course the big concern around the state right now, and other states as well around the country, is safety of our school children as we send them off to schools and things. Governor Collier came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and supported the idea of having teachers armed when they go, if they choose to be, when they go to school, to add some added security around their classrooms. Well, where do you come down on that?
Well, my wife is a high school teacher, and I know that we put a lot of demands on our teachers in Kansas today. We've seen classroom sizes go up as a result of school funding issues. And so, from my perspective, we have to have a better answer other than adding yet another burden on teachers, many of whom are certainly ill-equipped and ill-trained to be able to be responsible for that.
Right. We're joined by another guest here in studio, and a guy that you are kind of taking along with you as you've announced who your running mate is going to be for Lieutenant Governor. Would you like to introduce your companion?
Absolutely. I'm proud to say that yesterday I made the decision to ask Senator John Dahl from Garden City to join my campaign as my Lieutenant Governor, and he graciously accepted. It's early this morning, so I'm not sure he might have changed his mind overnight, but as of yesterday, actually when I left him at 1:30 in the morning, we were still a ticket. So I'm excited to have John Dahl, Garden City's own state senator, join me on my ticket.
Yes. Senator Dahl, good morning. Good to see you again.
Good seeing you, Dan.
Yeah, so always nice to have you here back in town with us. Talk about your decision to join Mr. Orman on his run for the gubernatorial seat.
Well, it was great. It was an easy decision to make. I got to know Greg through last year, and we would sit and talk on a number of occasions about policies and his path moving forward. And I was extremely excited. It was a path that I could surely support. And when I was asked, it was other than asking my wife accepted, this has been pretty exciting. I really feel like I can be a loud, strong voice for not only western Kansas, but rural Kansas. And I think that we would be a good pick.
Yep. There it is. All right, we're going to go ahead and cut out of that feed. That's our simulcast with KIUL out of Garden City, and the official announcement from Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governorship, as he's announced Republican State Senator John Dahl as his running mate when it comes to the governorship race there. And the official quote that came out of the press release earlier this morning: I'm running with Greg Orman because I believe he is the best possible governor that Kansas could have. He places the people first. He's not about party politics, and the only master he will serve is the people of Kansas. I want to get your thoughts on this when we come back. Also, we'll have our update, our very first weekly update from the County Commission. County Commissioner Jim Howell going to be joining us. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Interesting news here on the show, and we'll discuss that at a little bit later time. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM, wrapping up hour number 2. Lots to talk about after the official announcement of Senator John Dahl becoming the running mate for independent candidate Greg Orman for the governor's race. We'll talk about that coming up in hour number 3. But right now, the first time we have not done this yet. We've done the city, have not done the county. It's time for our county update. There it is, our county update. County Commissioner Jim Howell on the line with us. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good morning, Andy.
Oh, it's great to be with you. So we are doing this, and I appreciate you jumping on here. It's going to be a weekly bit right around this time just to talk about what's happening with the County Commission, with the county meeting that happens every Wednesday. And now there's not one this week, but we had to do kind of an introductory segment here to talk about it. A lot of people, how many people do you have actually show up to the County Commission meetings each week?
You know, it kind of varies. Sometimes we have virtually nobody show up. That's not very normal. Usually we have 3 or 4 or 5 people will show up. Sometimes when things are getting interesting, we'll have a room that's completely packed out, and then we have an overflow room that's also packed out. So it depends on what's going on, but I'd say on a typical Wednesday, we usually have somewhere between 5 and 10 people will show up.
Okay. All right. Well, it's at least it's a couple. Now, you guys also, though, just because they may not show up doesn't mean they may not be paying attention, because you guys do televise it, you do live stream it, and that way people can really watch however they want to.
That is correct. And by the way, I wasn't really counting any of our staff. We have lots of staff in the room that are doing presentations, and they're part of the meeting.
Sure.
But in terms of the general public that shows up, some of the times the public is here because they want to actually speak at our meeting, which, by the way, is a great opportunity. As you just said, we do televise our meetings. live on KPTS Channel 8. They're also rebroadcast on Channel 7 of the city, as well as on different channels here in the local area. When they're broadcast live, they're actually broadcast nearly statewide. So people in western Kansas are seeing our meetings live. We also stream them live on the internet on our website, but we also record the meetings and we post them to YouTube, and people can certainly go back and look at those. And so I know people are busy. Our meetings, unfortunately, are on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. when people are generally at work, especially Republicans are at work. And so for people to actually engage our meetings, they have to take off work. And so what I would like to do is just encourage people to know, number one, if they'll sign up for our agenda, they can go to our website and they can sign up to get the agenda mailed to them, emailed to them every week when it gets finalized on Fridays.
Sure.
And then when the meetings happen, if they are not able to attend or something that's interesting to them, certainly go back and get our sign up for our YouTube channel, and we will actually email them a link to the YouTube meetings as they're posted. We actually post our staff meetings each week as well as our county commission meetings each week. We only do actual business voting at the actual BOCC meetings that happen each week. But as you said a minute ago, Andy, we're not going to have a meeting today. Normally, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. is when we have our normal meetings. We also do Fire District 1 meetings at the same time. They're back to back.
Sure.
But sometimes we have to deviate. For example, today we have several commissioners that are attending the National Association of County Commissioners National Convention up in Washington, D.C. And so we don't have enough commissioners here to actually conduct a meeting. So we canceled today's meeting. Last week was the last Wednesday of the month. And every month on the last Wednesday, we don't normally have a meeting. But last week, we didn't have a meeting on Wednesday, but they called a special meeting, which they can also do. And again, if people sign up for the agenda information, they'll get emailed this information. But they had a special meeting last week, last Tuesday, and that was for the purpose of considering basically doing some bonds for some building needs that we had. So that happened last Tuesday in a special meeting. But nevertheless, I want you to know that people can come to us. We want to hear from them. We consider this to be free speech, so we don't require anybody to sign up ahead of time. You can just show up and speak about anything on the agenda or anything else, even if something is not on the agenda.
And make
You're
your
welcome
voice
to
heard.
speak at our meetings and bring it up.
Absolutely. County Commissioner Jim Howell, we had shortened time today just because of our simulcast of KIUL. I apologize for that, but next week, with you guys having a meeting back in a session next week, we're going to have some fun and talk about some of those issues.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on with us and doing this every week with us. It'll be a lot of fun. Hour number 3 coming up. Don't go anywhere. This is The Voice of Reason.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
Why should we feel guilty for arresting you? Why should we be like, you know what? Okay, you're a chemist, you're a teacher, you're contributing to society. Let's just let it slide. Why? We have laws for a reason, and it makes no sense to me why we would just say, you know what? We need to reform our immigration policy, and it's just too stringent. We're just going to say, rule of law, hey, here's a window. Let's go ahead and throw it out there.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Making it happen, also simulcasting on KGPT TV. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you here with us on a Wednesday, the pre-Friday celebration. You gotta sometimes, this is great, you have to sometimes just go to the left-wing media sources and just look at their headlines. I love it. Oh, I love it. It's fantastic. 7 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. Welcome aboard. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. It is comic relief. If you need to, go to MSNBC.com right now. Just go to MSNBC.com, and the very top story you would think would be the election from last night, but it's not. The primaries down in Texas, which we'll touch on in just a second here. But no, it's a video. Stormy Daniels, which was the porn star that apparently had an affair with Donald Trump that was paid off, and now that agreement has been broken, she's going to come out and it's the headline right there on MSNBC. Stormy Daniels sues Trump, says agreement invalid. That's the big news. Who cares about the election when they should be actually very happy about it? If you go into Drudge Report, one of the top things on Drudge right now is the blue state of Texas. And it says Dems rising, double turnout in Texas, which, as we talked about this in the first hour, is absolutely hysterical because, yeah, they had the largest turnout for Democrats in the primary for 16 years. But when you compare them to the numbers of turnouts for Republicans that weren't the activists, that weren't the excited, engaged ones, that weren't kind of like the 4th Congressional District that we had here for the special election, we weren't the ones that were all up and excited and yelling really, really loud. The Democrats were, the progressives were, the activists were. They were the ones wanting to change the dynamic of the discussion, right? Remember that. And the largest turnout for Democrats in 16 years, they showed up en masse, baby. If you would have compared it with the Republican turnout last night, they would have won zero zilch compared to what they already have. They turned zero zilch of the seats. We can look at the numbers. They're very easy to read. All you have to do is compare the number of people that showed up for the Republicans and combine them compared with the number of people for the Democrats. Texas governor. All of the Democrats combined last night for the primary topped at 1,017,000 votes. Greg Abbott, current Republican governor for the state of Texas, alone, without even combining the votes for the other people that got some votes, 1.39 million. Greg Abbott would have won the election last night if all the Democrats united behind one and Greg Abbott just received the votes that he did in the primary. Funny, isn't that? But remember, they turned out massively. How about the Senate seat? The Ted Cruz one. Remember the story a few months ago? Ted Cruz is going to lose in the primary. Ted Cruz is going to lose his seat. Conservatism's dying. Conservatism's going away. People are going to rise up. They're going to be changing because he has lost focus. He's upset a lot of donors in other states. He's upset the oil industry. He's upset this and that and the other. And he's done. He's over. He's out of it. Well, he did win the primary last night, by the way, with 85% of the vote. In the primary for the Democrats, all of them combined now, Beto, I don't know how you pronounce her name, Beto O'Rourke, won 641,000 votes, 61% of the vote last night, getting the nomination for the Democrats. Total for that Senate seat for the Democrats, 1,036,000. Total for Ted Cruz, not including the combined votes for the other 4 candidates running against him in the primary. Ted Cruz alone, 1.3 million votes. He would have won even if all the Democrats united behind one last night in a general election. Funny, right? Hysterical. How about all the House seats? There are 36 House seats in Texas, which I did not realize there were that many. How about House District number 1? 15,000 combined for the votes for Democrats, 64,000 for one candidate, not including the other 2. I don't think they would have won that one last night. How about House District number 2? Todd Litton, the Democrat, won with 52% of the vote for the primary with 15,000 votes. There were 4 other candidates on the ballot. Total combined 28,000 votes. The Republican, currently held by Ted Poe, a Republican, not on the ballot for this one. Kevin Roberts wins the primary nomination. It's a race-off with him and Dan Crenshaw. But total for the Republicans in that one, 46,000 compared to the Democrats, 28. I think we maintain that vote. The Democrats right now, all the media is trying to hype up the fact that Democrats doubled their turnout for the primary, that they're active, that they're rising up, that they're going to change the momentum in Texas. And look at that, the highest Democrat turnout in 16 years. Couldn't have won a single one of the new seats that they wanted to overturn last night if it was a general election and they combined all of their votes compared to many, in many races, one candidate on the Republican side. They still would have beat them. It's funny how the media tries to manipulate and says, look, everybody, the first primary, people are anti-Trump, people are anti-Republican, people are anti-conservative, and we have a Democrat doubling turnout in the state of Texas, which means we're just going to build that momentum for the rest of the primaries throughout the entire country. Absolute, complete hysterisy. It's hysterical, it's fun to watch, and it's really entertaining, in my opinion, to watch them feel like they have momentum and then be crushed. We started the slogan today. It is the complete victory of defeat for the Democrats in Texas last night. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Lots to get to this hour. It is open lines too. Guests this hour. As you know, the guest that we had was the simulcast on our sister station KIUL at 740 earlier in the last hour, as Greg Orman, independent gubernatorial candidate, announced his running mate, which is Republican State Senator John Dahl. And do you think that's going to help him? Do you think it's going to hurt him? Do you know anything about John Dahl? I do want to touch on him a little bit because I think it really doesn't change anything with the independent. It's kind of interesting that he chose him, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense. John Dahl is technically a Republican, but he hasn't always been. He hasn't always been a Republican. Back in 2006, he ran as a Democrat in the 1st Congressional District out in the Big First in the western part of the state against Jerry Moran. Ran as a Democrat. Ended up switching to a Republican and ended up running for the House. Ended up beating the current House member that was out there, Ronaldo Mesa. I was a good friend of his at the time, actually, when I was out in Garden City, and ended up beating him. And now is a Republican senator. His quote, "I'm running with Greg Orman because I believe he is the best possible governor that Kansas could have. He places the people first. He's not about party politics, and the only master he will serve is the people of the great state of Kansas." And he accepts the running mate ticket, lieutenant governor ticket for Greg Orman, the independent, as a Republican. Now, the motive, I would assume, being the analyst that I like to try and be, is Greg Orman chose him for the fact that he is a Republican to try and swing some of the Republican vote. He's from the western part of the state that could help him influence the election in that sense, and I say good for him with that try. I think it's a solid move for him. And it's not a firebrand conservative or a firebrand liberal one way or the other. It is a moderate Republican that's been on both sides of the aisle, where talking to many different legislators had said that John Dahl is one of those that is one that does not worry about voting with Republicans or with Democrats on policy. A very moderate candidate for an independent ticket. And that works in the favor of Greg Orman. Will it work in favor of the voters when it comes to the general election in November? That's what I want to ask you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Pam.
Hey, good morning, Pam. How are you today?
Well, I'm all right. How about you?
We're just having more fun than we should be.
Well, me too.
Every day.
Yes.
Every day.
But I just, as a matter of fact, I didn't want to throw everything off the subject, but yesterday I called in about the Butler County Community College subsidies by the taxpayers, and I figured up on my tax bill it is 21 and a little change % of my real estate taxes go to Butler County Community College.
21%.
Yes, sir.
Well, don't you feel good about that fact?
Yeah, right.
I mean, do you feel really giving back to the community? You feel like that, it's your charitable giving to where you can feel really warm inside about the fact that you're helping with the youth giving their education.
I'm seriously thinking about sticking that on as a charitable donation on my taxes.
You probably should. You probably should. If anybody takes the time to break down where their tax money actually goes, I think we should start that to say, you know what, if we already contribute to K through 12 or higher education through our tax money, we should be able to write that off as a charitable donation going towards education in our community.
Well, and see, this is all separate than regular education.
Oh, of course.
They break it down right on our tax bill, what goes to what.
Mm-hmm.
But, and now back on the subject, did Greg Orman ever answer that school safety question?
When Dan asked him that, he was interesting.
He said, I don't want to put more responsibility on teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't really an answer. I mean, I think the question was asked, do you support the more guns in the classroom? And I mean, I guess he answered it in that sense. Now, what he would actually do for the safety, he didn't answer it in that question.
Yeah.
But I think he did answer would you support more guns in the school? And he just said we don't need to put more responsibility onto the teachers. My wife's a high school teacher, and I don't want to see that happen. And that's usually been the response from a lot of individuals that are not that are not in favor of giving guns to teachers. Either the teachers aren't paid enough to do an additional duty, or they have enough responsibility, or we just don't need more guns in the situation, which all of them, in my personal opinion, are just ways to scoot around the question and say, yeah, we need to do something, but I don't want to hear about any of the solutions to it.
Because it's all up to the teacher.
Well, sure. I mean, if it's the teachers that actually... Sure.
Or not.
Sure. If we're educating the students and the teachers there with the children for the next 8 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours of the day, then you're right. It's their duty at that time while they're in possession. It's kind of like one of those things where when you loan your car to somebody, at that time, It's the responsibility of that individual driving the car to take care of the car and make sure they don't get a dent in it. And it's really the same situation when you hand off your kid to someone to really handle them for 6 hours of the day. For those 6 hours, that person's responsible for what happens to your children. It's whether we actually take the initiative to want to make them secure or not.
A good analogy. I like that analogy, too.
I mean, it's really the same thing, isn't it? A family member says, hey, my car broke down. Can I drive it to work today? Yeah, but if I come back and there's a bumper missing, then we're going to have a discussion.
And, as a teacher, I would like to be able to protect my own life, let alone the lives of my little babes I'm entrusted to.
Well, of course. And it was a typical response from Greg, and I'm not knocking him or attacking him in any way, shape, or form here, but it is anticipated in that sense, being an independent candidate, that he wants to try and play both sides of the aisle to try and win support from Republicans and Democrats. If he came out and said, yes, I support teachers being able to carry firearms, then automatically he's going to be pandering more to the Republicans, and he's not going to win much from Democrats. If he came out and said that, no, we shouldn't have any guns at all, and we need to put them in the little safety composite box that we have that we're trying to build in the teachers' classrooms, then he would be casting out many Republican potential supporters of him. So it was a very walk the line type of response that I guess that really wasn't very much of a surprise.
Wow, I'm just way too opinionated to walk any fence ever.
Well, that's why we have a radio show to be able to vent on some of those, because we don't care. But I mean, and I'm not saying, some people agree with him, some people disagree with him, but it was a very anticipated response in that kind of question.
Yeah, and see, I forget he's running as an independent.
He is running as independent, but as you know, he's run as an independent before, and he's gained 90% of his support from the Democrats.
Yes.
So,
and they always do.
And they usually always do. Especially when the races that he ran in didn't have a Democrat candidate, they backed the support behind him, which is why they're not too happy with him running for governor now to potentially steal away. So I think it was a political move to choose a Republican with John Dahl, the state senator, to be able to have him on the ticket to try and win over some Republican support and show that he's not trying to steal some of the Democrats too much and upset that party and ruffle that feather too much. But at the same time, it's a very moderate Republican that's played both sides of the aisle many times in the past as well.
So he's still just sucking up to the Democrats.
I guess you could put it that way. Pam, I love it. I appreciate the call very much. So let's go ahead and snag one more call before we take a break, shall we? 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Hello.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
My name is Bill.
Hey, good morning, Bill. Yeah, what's good? Good morning to you. What's happening?
Well, I appreciate your show. I've been watching it. I do have a comment on this teachers and firearms.
Sure.
I've been an avid gun user, a police officer, a prison guard, you name it. I've done it in my life. I'm now retired. I believe in the armed citizenry being a proper thing, but I think we keep missing the one issue that when we say, should teachers be allowed to carry a firearm in a school?
Mm-hmm.
If we stand true to the Second Amendment, I believe that every citizen should be allowed to carry a firearm everywhere they choose.
That is a great point. And you're right. And it's funny when the districts, debate this, whether they allow or not allow. All they have to do is get rid of the law that says, or the rule that says you're not allowed to carry, and then it's not forcing everybody to say you must carry, and if you're not comfortable because you never fired a gun in your life, we're going to force you and train you and that sort of thing. We're not saying that, but if you just get rid of the laws prohibiting that, it's their choice to do so. And if they choose to do so, then you're right. Then we have the right to carry that firearm where we deem necessary to protect the individuals around us. And this situation would be our children that we provide and allow the teacher in the school district to oversee for the next 6 hours every day. And we want to be sure that they're actually going to protect our children, and it's that responsibility. And if they feel comfortable doing so, then all we need to do is just remove the law saying they're not allowed to, and then let them choose or not, whether they want to or not.
This is very true. The thing that I think we have to be very careful, words have meaning and words have impact.
Mm-hmm.
And if we say allow them, they already have the allowance. The Second Amendment allows that.
Sure.
In fact, it doesn't allow it, it demands it.
If that's true.
So we have to quit saying that should we allow teachers to carry firearms? No. for their own Second Amendment right.
Mm-hmm.
They have a right to carry. Now, if we don't like our kids going to that school or being around that, then I guess we have a choice to make.
And guess what? We have that freedom of choice to choose where we want to take our kids to school and where our kids want to go to school, both for higher education as well. If you don't like the fact that one university allows the concealed on the carry on campus and you don't feel comfortable, or your student doesn't feel comfortable wanting to go to that campus, then guess what? They have plenty of other options to go and take their money and their subsidized student loans and their education somewhere else if that's what they choose to do.
That's exactly true. And that's the thing, is our freedom of choice, and our freedom is what we're really talking about here. But we have to be careful of using the term in our own language every day, and I'm guilty of it. And I hear it on the show, too, which is not a condemnation of you. But we have to quit saying allowing, because we are allowing nothing. These are God-given rights. I'm a preacher, so these are God-given rights that he grants us the right to self-protect.
Sure.
So each teacher, instead of being imprisoned in a place where they cannot protect themselves, they have the right to protect themselves. And we keep splitting that hair and breaking that terminology down so that people cannot understand the reality of freedom.
Sure. I completely agree, my friend. Bill, God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for calling in, and thank you for all the service that you've done. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you so much. Got to take a break, but made some really good points. And you're right. We use a lot of that terminology on the show, and just for the sole reason that it goes with the discussion for people to understand it more in the mainstream. Doesn't mean that we actually support it or believe it, but you're absolutely right. The terminology is extremely important, and allowing shouldn't even be in the discussion because, hey, we do have the Second Amendment to be able to make our choice if we want to choose or not, and no one can say we allow it or not because that decision's already been made a really long time ago. But in today's discussions, the discussion unfortunately has taken a different turn, and we need to appeal to that so that way they can actually understand it in that sense. But I appreciate that, and I totally understand. 25 minutes past the hour. Let's take a break. We'll open up lines to you when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Went a little late on that last segment, but appreciate all the phone calls. Let's keep them rolling, baby. Bottom of the hour news coming up. It's open lines to you for the last half hour of The Voice of Reason on a Wednesday. Stay here.
Listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Right on! Let's do it! Rock that world! Rock that world!
Give him a call at 721-TALK.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today. Can you believe it? It's gone by just way too fast. 36 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. I do want to tell you about next week. Oh, we got some fun stuff happening here pretty quickly. Not only do we have the brackets for you for the basketball tournaments coming up in the next week or so, that more information coming out on those. Stay tuned. But next week here on the KQAM airwaves, you have your opportunity, if you're aware or not, that Disney on Ice is coming to town. Yes, Intrust Bank Arena. We got some tickets for you. The Disney on Ice event is going to be held March 22nd through March 25th. So numerous days, about 3-4 days, you'll be able to go. You get a chance to go see Mickey Mouse, Minnie, all the great classics, all your favorite princesses. Anna, Elsa, Olaf from Frozen. You get to see Moana, the new one. I love Moana. I love that movie. My daughter is huge into Moana. They're going to be there, of course, Nemo and Dory and all the great Disney characters. It's Disney on Ice. It's going to be a lot of fun. Go to IntrustBankArena.com or get tickets at SelectAseat.com. But you're going to get a chance next week, Monday through Friday, during Laura Ingraham. During the middays on KQAM, noon to 2, during Laura Ingraham. All you got to do is listen for the sounder, be the first one to call in, and we'll get you a pair of tickets to Disney on Ice, starting up March 22nd through the 25th. So be ready for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got some great tickets and a great event for you to take the kiddos to and have some fun with. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Nick.
Nick, what's going on, my friend?
Oh, I'm just loving the entertainment value this morning.
I appreciate that. We're having some fun today.
Hey, you said free-for-all for the last little bit here.
Sure.
I wanted to say that you mentioned the word marijuana earlier on the show, And so I wanted to put a picture in your head.
All right, go for it.
There's a home where children eat highly processed food and candy,
Okay.
living in an environment where there are prescription opioids, ashtrays filled with cigarette butt, empty bottles of whiskey, a coffee maker with appropriate paraphernalia, and a television in each room with DVR and 2 game consoles, all with the lyrics of some death metal band pumping out of the stereo.
Hey, hold on here. Wait a second. I like that death metal thing right there. That's at least the good part of this picture.
Yet, DCF and police will probably not take your children from you or seize you for those things. However, if you possess cannabis, they likely will. Now, let's just say those children also have seizure disorders, and they're on 15 medications that are marketed on the stock market and using invasive marketing for them to get on, and they do not work. And so they have to be refugees, if you will, to another state so they can get something that eases their pain and suffering. Now, I don't know what your definition, maybe I'm confused on what the definition of a conservative is, but I don't understand how the poster child for the bullying of a government has to do with a plant that has never killed anybody in its entire known existence.
It is, well, it's an interesting scenario that you've described here. Let me ask you something, though. Do you, if they are ingesting the plant at home privately in their basement, the kids are asleep, and the same scenario, there's the death metal playing, and there's the bottles of whiskey on the table, and there's some cookies on the counter and crumbs everywhere, and we're sitting downstairs, we're watching the movie, and we're smoking that. How many people, I'm curious, because I don't know the stat, but I know it's not very many, I don't think, of individuals have had the door barged in on them with the police coming in rounding them up just because they smoked in their basement?
I don't have the statistics on that, but I'm just talking about when you cut it to the bone of what we say we are for and against. You know, you look at substances like cigarettes, nicotine delivery systems. It's not just the plant, but the engineered product made with harmful or potentially harmful constituents that are allowed by the FDA.
Sure. But let's look at this scenario for a second first, because you bring up an interesting scenario. I mean, you're right, because you're allowed to have the empty bottles of whiskey all across the home. You're allowed to listen to whatever you want. You're allowed to have the cookies or the donuts or whatever that may not be the most healthy for you in that sense. So you're right. But the individual that's doing all that as well, but with a joint in their hand in their basement, they're not getting the door knocked down on them, busted through, and having them rounded up. The only people that actually get rounded up and actually get punished for having illegal possession of marijuana is if they're traveling in the car with it, which is really the same as if you're driving while you're intoxicated with alcohol as well. If you have enough in your vehicle, or they have enough to where they think that you may be selling it on the market, or if you're doing something in public and you're affected by it, is when you actually get these ticks on you on record for actually having possession of marijuana. If you're doing it in your basement, I've not heard of a single case of a police officer knocking on the door and saying, "Are you smoking marijuana in your basement? Let me come down and smell and do a little search, and then we'll arrest you and haul you away for doing that." I haven't heard of a single one. So we can debate, and I love the idea of debating on whether we should legalize the plant or not, but just someone who does it in their basement because they choose to do so because it relaxes them more so than alcohol. I haven't heard of a single case of a police officer just randomly checking on your door to see if you're doing that.
Sure. I think the fear of that happening keeps otherwise law-abiding citizens with no intent for the use of cannabis. It would keep them from even trying to use it to alleviate their suffering, and instead they have to sometimes choose between going to the grocery store and buying food or going to the pharmacy and buying these synthetic substances to help combat the sicknesses that they have, maybe from the substances in the food that they are eating.
Sure. No, absolutely. And that opens up a huge Pandora's box when it comes to the price of pharmaceuticals, and when it comes to the side effects of the pharmaceuticals, to where you have an illness and you get a pill, and then the pill causes other side effects, and it may solve the initial issue, but then you got to get on other pills to be able to help the other issues and the ailments that cause from the side effects of the first one, and it goes the spiraling down. Look, I mean, you know, my wife's been very, very sick for a long time, and she's been on pills for years, and we've seen those side effects, to where one of the pills that she was taking for the kidney problems that she had gave her gout, and then they started giving her gout medicine because she started getting gout, and it was just a spiraling spiraling out of control thing to where issues that she's never had before she had to start dealing with. And it was very frustrating for a long time. Now we're starting to slowly get back on track. I think we still have some issues to address, but that opens up a whole nother door, and there could be some. Look, I'm with you.
Yes, sir. Can I make two more quick points?
Go for it, yeah.
You read any recent poll, and it is clear that Americans and Kansas, both bipartisanly, are tired of this kind of prohibition. It didn't work in the past, and it doesn't work now. And we are still in the land of the free, as I know. And in the final analysis, this is an agriculture commodity in an ag-heavy state that's currently in fiscal crisis. Now, by continuing cannabis prohibition, we are aiding the black market street thugs, fueling violence and the needless suffering of those who get relief from naturally occurring substances like cannabis, or kratom for that matter, and inflating the value of organic plant material as it pertains to the principles of supply and demand. This is not what we are about, and it's time that we take the entertainment value out of it and look at the what exactly consequences we are facing our children with.
I like it. Let me play devil's advocate again there, because I like to do that, and it's a lot of fun. The black market, did the black market end in Colorado after they legalized it?
I blame that squarely on the federal government, because if the federal government recognized our God-given rights and was to protect them instead of use greed and deception, then there wouldn't be that issue that you find having go out.
Okay, well, what if states?
There's still a black market for cigarettes and things like that. So there has to be some sort of law enforcement, and we have to have some reasonable legislation when it comes to it. But when it comes to the actual saying we're going to have this on the Schedule 1 where you can't touch it at all is just ridiculous.
Yeah, but I don't see that as a factor of the black market still in Colorado. It should be up to the states. I mean, if we believe in constitutional republicanism, it's the states that make decisions like that. I agree. It should not be a federal government issue. It should be a state issue. And if there are states that still decide that they don't want it and states that do decide they want it, but even within the state of Kansas or the Colorado all by itself, it is the strongest marijuana in the world, because they've kind of genetically tweaked it to make it a little bit stronger. The THC levels are way higher, but the black market is still there. And I would say the reasoning for the black market to be still be there is because the government, as you mentioned, greed at the state level, began taxing it at a ridiculous amount of sales tax to where you can still buy it on the streets for a heck of a lot cheaper and be able to buy it behind the door, behind the building of the same building that's selling the recreational marijuana legally, and then taxing it at 100% rate just because they feel they have the opportunity to do so.
Right, and we can talk about the regulation and taxing of it, all the time, and that's definitely a thing that needs to be talked about. But what I'm talking about again is saying that a person should have the ability to put seeds in the ground and water it, nourish it, feed it, and then use it for whatever uses, whether it's non-FDA evaluated therapeutic uses, food such as the hemp seed, fibers such as the low THC cannabis that everybody's calling the industrial hemp, or anything like that. But these markets are stifled because of, frankly, campaign finance reports involving lobbyists and things like that, and as well as well-intentioned people having bad information to go along with.
Well, I see your point on that. We do have a lot of reform to go with it. I still am not a fan of it, and I still would advocate at a statewide level to not legalize it, just in that sense that I mean we've seen the black market. It hasn't helped the black market go away, or the drug lords, or anybody actually going away in Colorado. We're seeing we're still seeing many problems with it, and until I would say that if the government gets out of it completely and says you can grow it, you can sell it, you can do whatever you want with it without any type of regulation, then fine. I mean, that's the true libertarian conservative aspect to it. But as soon as they start regulating it and taxing it, then there's going to be money tied into it, and it's not going to be a good deal.
I think if we were true to that line of thinking, then we would also be advocating for prohibiting things like cigarettes or alcohol or caffeine or sugar or any other substances that are potentially harmful to the body. But we're not, and that creates a hypocrisy. And that is not what we're about, and that is why we have challenges to the Republican Party the way we do right now.
Well, no taking on that one. Nick, I appreciate it. We got to take a break, but interesting conversation. The rebuttal I would have from that one is just the fact that right now, at least until we make it mainstream, which you can't have both, either make it completely natural without corporations getting involved in taxing it, or we make it completely mainstream with corporations and taxing it. But until we do make it more mainstream, then the THC levels are going to be inaccurate. As I mentioned before, 13%, 8% of the labels on marijuana plants or the sales of in Colorado are completely inaccurate. And until we actually make that mainstream to know exactly what you're ingesting with the percentages of the thing that affects you and affects your mind, then I think we're going to have a hard time moving that discussion forward realistically and actually being able to get some other states to sway that out of the way. But I love the conversation, Nick. Appreciate it very much. 48 minutes past the hour. Let's take one more break, wrapping up the show today. Also, there's big news coming out of the state legislature today. There's a vote in the Senate you kind of need to know about. Make some phone calls today. If you get an opportunity to go up to speak it today, do it. The votes are going to be at 2 o'clock. We'll talk about that when we come back right here on The Voice of Reason.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Wrapping up the show today. Welcome back into it. It's been a fun one. Appreciate all the phone calls. Appreciate all the conversations. We love it. Trying to break the big news here. The running mate for Greg Orman, independent gubernatorial candidates for 2018. Trying to get the information out. Chris Kobach under trial right now when it comes to the ACLU, trying to stop his voter fraud. And then votes happening, of course, in Topeka today with the legislature and the Convention of States movement being able to move through the committees, going on to the floor, and the Senate voting on it today. If you want to support the Convention of States movement, give the Senate a call. Give the state Senate. Call State Senator Ty Masterson. Call Susan Wagle. Call the Republicans and Democrats. Call everybody. Call Mike Peterson. Call everybody that you know in the Senate. Email them. Call them. Facebook them. Knock on their doors. Whatever you end up doing. Let's rally. Let's rally. Let's let them know that we need this to happen. We need the 3/4 majority in order to be able to pass it, or the 2/3 majority, be able to make this happen. Let's make sure that they're aware and that we can get it to the House. We have an easier time in the House. The House is going to be a bit easier because we have more Republicans in there. And if we're able to make them feel comfortable with it, then we have an opportunity to do so. But today at 2 o'clock is the vote in the Senate. And you, the activist, the engaged individual, you have an opportunity to make a change here, to make a difference, and to let them know what you think on this. So call your senators, call your state senator all across the entire state of Kansas. Let them know to vote for the Convention of States movement. We talk about, in the great conversation that we just had with Nick in the last segment on marijuana, that kind of thing. We can start changing. We can start holding the power back at the statewide levels. No, I'm not a fan of recreational marijuana. I'm a fan of agricultural hemp, but I'm not a fan of marijuana. But it's a discussion and a vote and a decision that needs to be made at the state level, not at the federal level. If we go back to the original intent of the Constitution, the federal government should not have a say in these types of things. It should be the state. The states are supposed to be sovereign. The states are supposed to be independent. The states are supposed to work on its own level and then allot a very few duties to the federal government, like national security, like foreign relations. And oh, by the way, that falls into immigration as well. And we can get down that road. One of the duties of these states and these sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that are trying to block the federal government to be able to enforce illegal immigration, completely bogus. One of the real duties that they actually do have is foreign relations. Where are these people coming from? From foreign places, which means they get to be regulated from the federal side on who comes in and who does not come in. But other than national defense, other than foreign relations and trade and currency, that's about it. The states, the sovereign states, are the ones that actually make the majority of the decisions, or should be making the majority of the decisions. Marijuana, interstate commerce, trading from Kansas to Colorado, trading from Kansas to Nebraska, or to Kansas to Texas, that's up to us to be able to make those decisions. But guess what? Right now, we're not in a position to do that. We have a legislature right now that cannot decide on what to do with our education. Right now, we have a legislature that cannot decide what our tax rate is going to be because they want to spend too much, and we're getting into deficits. Right now, we wouldn't be able to take on that responsibility because we're too immature at the state level right now to grow up. We are still the premature child trying to learn about what the world's all about before we flourish and blossom and grow into the adult to take on that responsibility. And that's not a diss on Kansas because you and I, we're the responsible ones. It's the legislature that can't get its act together and thinks that we are not spending enough. Once we can get over those hurdles, then we can start moving in the right direction. And the Convention of States movement is the great way to partner up with many other states in the nation to say, wait a second, federal government, you've had just about enough of your authority, enough of your power, and we're going to start taking matters into our hands as a state. That's what I'm excited about. We are wrapping up the show. We got about a minute left, but I do want to we haven't given one of these away in a while, but I have a copy of the book, What Was Really the Matter with the Kansas Tax Plan, The Undoing of a Good Idea. It's from the Kansas Policy Institute, written by Dave Traubert, Denidre Herbert. They wrote a book on what happened with the Kansas tax plan, what we can do to get ourselves back on track, and learning about the history of the politics that got involved in a good idea with tax cuts that Governor Sam Brownback did with the reform back in 2012. And if you want to learn about the budget, if you want to learn about the politics behind the budget, this is the book that you need. Let's go ahead and do caller number 2. Caller number 2 at 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK will get you a copy of What Was Really the Matter with the Kansas Tax Plan, written by the Kansas Policy Institute. Dave Traubert and Denidre Herbert will give you a call right now as we wrap up the show today on a Wednesday. This is your show. As always, we always love it. We thank everybody listening, calling in, tuning in, checking it out as we do every single day. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always, and I mean always, speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.